Well, everybody, welcome. If you don't mind, you can move in a little bit. There's a huge vacant space here that we can certainly fill. So feel free to do that. So come on in. Oh, what a nice looking group. Thank you very much for joining me here this afternoon. It's a pleasure to welcome you all to this walking tour. And for those of you who are joining us in live stream, we welcome you too. It's great to have you as part of this event. My name is Sherman Zavitz. I'm going to be your host here on this walking tour over the next little while. And again, I thank you very much, as I say, for signing up and showing up here this afternoon. How many of you have been on my walking tours before? I'm sure some of you, many of you have. All right. That's great. Thank you. How many were with me last May when we did a tour of the center area? Some of you were. Okay. That's great. I just want to take a moment to make a little clarification, because once that tour was over and I sort of reviewed it in my mind, I realized some people at least could have been left with a bit of misinformation or confusion perhaps about one detail. So if you happen to be one of those people, it had to do with the American Can Company on Lewis Avenue, right next to where the Post cereal plant is now. A quick review of the American Can. It started out as the Sanitary Can Company in 1907. It was bought out by the American Can Company in 1915. They made tin cans, vast amounts of tin cans, to serve the fruit and vegetable canning industry in southern Ontario. But they stopped making tin cans in 1930. That operation was ended. But they converted the plant to a machine shop and continued to operate under the American Can name for a number of years after that. The site is all now part of the Post plant. But just a little clarification in case there was some confusion in any of your minds about the history of that plant, and I just wanted to clarify that. So thank you again for being here. A few people I would like to acknowledge and give sincere thanks to. This tour is done with a huge amount of cooperation and assistance then from the Niagara Falls History Museum. And I do want to thank Jonathan Milner, who's right over there then at the table, for his help, considerable help. He's sort of the business manager, you might say, for this event. Standing beside him is Fawn, who's one of the volunteers through the museum. And she'll be helping us this afternoon as well. And over here on my right, Clark Burnett, who is the Niagara Falls Culture and Museums Manager, and is in charge of the live streaming this afternoon as well. So thank you very much to Clark. Now, just before we actually start walking on this walking tour, a bit of information about where we are. This is a really significant historic site, this intersection, in the history of Niagara Falls. If we'd been standing right here where we are now then, say back in 1880, we would have been standing not in the city of Niagara Falls, but we would have been in the town of Clifton. The town of Clifton. And to be more precise, we would have been right beside a prominent building that was on this corner for a long time, known as the Ogen House Hotel. It was built in the late 1850s. It was here till around 1910, and was a very, very prominent, busy building. During the last few years of its life, it became rather notorious as a kind of a wild spot, I guess. But anyway, it was a landmark, no question about that. The Ogen House Hotel. A tiny settlement began right here in 1848. 1848. That was the year the first bridge was opened across the Niagara River Gorge. It was a primarily wooden suspension bridge, quite narrow, that spanned the gorge then just over here where the Whirlpool Rapids Bridge is now. But a very significant event. You might ask, why was the bridge built over there? And the answer is quite simple.
It's the narrowest part of the river.
The narrowest part of the gorge, that's right. Which meant that the costs and the engineering challenge were both a little bit less than they would have been had the bridge been built elsewhere along the length of the gorge. So it was a logical spot. And at that point, as the bridge opened then, a tiny little settlement began here. Let's fast forward 5 years to 1853. In 1853, another significant event occurred here, the arrival of the railway, the Great Western Railway from Hamilton to Toronto. Very important event. The railway was routed to the bridge because the plan was to rebuild that bridge to make it possible to have a rail crossing. And that's what was done over the next 2 years. The earlier bridge was largely dismantled, and a new bridge called the Railway Suspension Bridge was constructed. A mighty, mighty bridge it was, and a great engineering feat for the time. It was a double-deck bridge, though, with rail traffic on the top deck, carriages and pedestrians on the lower. It opened in 1855, and as I say, it was a great marvel for the time, and quite a major tourist attraction here, too, for quite a long time. All of this, of course, gave a lot of impetus to the growth of this community here with the bridge, because now you have this community at the Canadian end of an important international rail crossing. We had a major divisional point of the Great Western Railway, and it was also part of the ever-growing tourism industry here in Niagara Falls. The following year, 1856, then, the town council for Clifton decided, quite wisely I'd say, to change the name of the community from Clifton to Niagara Falls. So as of 1856, it was the town of Niagara Falls. And that was a very good move. There was lots and lots of business here. The business community began here at the lower Bridge Street and moved on up Bridge Street, down Erie Avenue, onto Park Street too, and then over to the lower portion of Queen Street. Many different businesses here. In 1856, it was reported there were 20 saloons. 20. What was still a very small community, although growing quickly. So there was no shortage of a place to get a drink if you were so inclined. Very important. The Great Western Railway went through some name changes over the years. It later became part of the Grand Trunk Railway system, and still later part of Canadian National. And the tracks you see just up here, still part of the Canadian National Railway system then. So a lot of growth, and certainly some very important growth. It was the start of this community, and the railway and the bridge were a major portion of, or a major part, I should say, of all that growth. We mentioned 1880 a few minutes ago. Let's remember 1881. That, as I say, was the year the town council changed the name to the town of Niagara Falls, but we should add one more chapter to that story. That came in 1904, when the name was changed once again to the city of Niagara Falls, because that was the year the town of Niagara Falls here amalgamated with the village of Niagara Falls, which was in the Main and Ferry area, to create the city of Niagara Falls, 1904. All right. Now we're shortly going to start our walking part of this tour, and we're going to be going, if you just wait a minute though, down to the corner here, turning right. Some of you may have been with me on the tour we did a year ago last spring. We started right here. But on that tour we went north. We went north, downriver, and eventually started exploring part of Silvertown. Some of you remember that tour? Yeah, a year ago last May. This time we're going south. We're going to go upriver then and explore some of the area along River Road here and some of the side streets off River Road. So that's the plan here then. And shortly after we make the turn here to the right on River Road, we'll be going under another bridge. And I should add, by the way, this bridge over here, the Whirlpool Rapids Bridge, dates to 1897. It replaced the Great Railway Suspension Bridge that year. But it's on exactly the same site. Exactly the same site. So we're going to be going under this bridge over here. It's the bridge that was built by the Michigan Central Railway then, back in 1925. Michigan Central Railway was an American line that ran between Detroit and Buffalo by way of southern Ontario, including Niagara Falls. So they built this bridge across the gorge. It was later owned by the New York Central Railway and finally by Canadian Pacific at the time the bridge was closed here in 2001. So any comments, questions, concerns before we move off? And I should certainly add that comments, questions, concerns are always welcome. I do a lot of talking on these tours, but certainly you're welcome to talk too. So if you have a little question, if you have a little story or something related to what we're looking at or talking about, please speak up. It's your tour, and we'd like you to enjoy it as much as possible, get as much out of it as possible. Yes?
I can remember as a little girl crossing this bridge with my grandma.
Crossing the bridge with your grandmother, yes?
And there were boards and large spaces in between, and I looked and I think, the water was purifying to look down there.
Yes, no, don't look down. Well, this, it's still a double-deck bridge. The railway suspension bridge we spoke about in 1855 was a double-decker, as we said. This is two. Two trains a day use this bridge on the upper level, and then vehicles use the lower deck. Pedestrians are no longer allowed on this bridge. All right, well, thank you very much. Let me just get over here so I can sort of lead the way, and then we'll start the walking portion.
I can remember playing it.
Good. All right, going across. We're good.
Thank you. Hold the traffic up.
I'm just kind of standing there.
If we hit a crack, then no, they think so.
We're going across?
Yes. Sure does. Fonts in the back. Yes, the green.
Yes, we're good. We're good. Keep coming. Back down the other way.
Nice family picture. Where is this river? Hey, Clark.
If you want to move up here a little bit, please, that would be a help. As we gather under the big Q here, beautiful Queen Street. Named, of course, early on in Clifton's history, Niagara Falls history, named after Queen Victoria. River Road, of course, named for the fact that it does run alongside a river. Earlier on, much earlier on, it was often referred to as Front Street. But the River Road here, of course, is part of the Niagara Parkway, which goes the whole length of the Niagara River, Lake Erie to Lake Ontario. Now we're at the foot of Queen Street, and a very important street in the city's history over the years. And as we round the corner here shortly, as we continue on down River Road, we're going to see the front of this building. You can see, of course, a bit of the side as well. If you're looking behind you in some cases, that an Art Deco building, which is rather striking. It's not a common kind of architecture along this road, so worth noting. And also the barrel you're going to see out in front of this building, called Hill's Barrel. Major, which was not a military rank, it was part of his name, Major Lloyd Hill, was a son of William Red Hill Sr., Niagara Falls' famous riverman from some years ago. Hill shot the rapids, the Whirlpool Rapids then, in that barrel on July 30th, 1949. He got trapped in the Whirlpool for 2 hours before he could finally be rescued. So the barrel is worth noting. Been out here, quite a prominent site here in River Road for a long time. I assume it's owned by the people who run the business here. So the Art Deco building and Hill's Barrel, worthy of note. Now, we spoke a few minutes ago about how things would be if we had been standing at the corner bridge in River Road there back in 1880. If you've been standing right here where we are now, anytime between the years 1893 and 1932, you would have seen a rail line going down the road out here. A rail line, part of an electric railway line, originally known as the Niagara Falls Park and River Railway. It opened back in 1893, and it ran between Chippewa and Queenston. It was a very, very prosperous line from the beginning. People loved it, especially visitors. You could get off a train down here at the Bridge Street Railway Station and just walk a few steps down to River Road, board one of the electric line cars, and they would take you right on up into Chippewa or Queen Victoria Park, or wherever you wanted to go along the route. Or, of course, the other direction down to Queenston. So it was quite handy for our visitors, as well as some local people who used it as well. In 1902, the Niagara Falls Park and River Railway joined another electric line that operated on the other side of the gorge. And they created what was often referred to as a belt line and established what became known as the Great Gorge Route. And it was a fabulous trip. It must have been. You could have boarded a car, say, in Chippewa. You would have come down alongside the river. You would have seen the upper rapids. You would have passed Table Rock, down through Queen Victoria Park, and on down through River Road here, along where we are right now, down to Bridge Street, on down along by the Whirlpool to the edge of the Niagara Escarpment. Then by a series of sharp turns, you would descend the escarpment into the village of Queenston. And then you would cross what was there at the time a suspension bridge across the Niagara River to the New York State side. Then the car would move right along the edge of the river. You're right down at the bottom of the gorge there, traveling alongside the river, seeing the rapids and so on. As you approach Niagara Falls, New York, the car would move up the side of the escarpment into Niagara Falls, New York. You would then cross the Fallsview Bridge, or the Upper Steel Arch Bridge, as it was often called, which stood near where the Rainbow Bridge is now, into Niagara Falls, Ontario. You would have made a big loop. You would have traveled along much of the gorge then here on top, and on the other side of the river at the bottom of the gorge. Must have been a fabulous experience. But it came to an end in 1932 for a variety of reasons, most of which were financially related. So that was the end of the Great Gorge Route. But while it was operating, it was an extremely popular, widely popular experience here in Niagara Falls. So kind of picture that, the rail tracks and the poles and so on going down River Road here. After the... I can't compete there. After the rail line ended, there we are. After the rail line was ended, the tracks were tied up, the road was widened, and took on the appearance much as you see it now. Any questions, concerns, or whatever? As we move on up the street, have a look at the Art Deco building, the Bill out here, Rose Bill from 1949. You'll then see a number of homes, but the one home I'd like you to pay a special note to is the rectory for Christ Church. It's a stone house then, right beside, or I should say behind, the church. You can't really miss it if you're looking then. Stone building then, a stone house dating to 1879. Built as the Christ Church Rectory, it's still in use as the Christ Church Rectory. And as we pass that house, have a look up. Just under the roof, you'll see some very interesting decorative woodwork there, including brackets and so on, just under the roof line. So you might want to have a look at that as well. And then I'll speak to you again once we get to the front lawn of Christ Church. So just let me head out here. Yes, sir? Oh, that was there till over 60 or something. Yeah, there were various versions of that bridge over the years, but the last one would be very early 60s. Yeah. Yeah.
Parents crossing that?
Oh yeah.
Oh,
the coast it's not right near the water level, much above it. I think it's 1962. Yeah, I think so. The Lewiston Queenston Bridge.
Question. Where did it go down, the train?
Down the side of the escarpment, a series of curves.
Near where?
Well, just above the village, really. Above Queenston Village,
Okay.
yeah.
My grandfather always talked about that train
Uh-huh.
over there. Nobody seems to know much about it.
Well, it was quite an experience, I'm sure, if they had written that.
Yeah. Art Deco. What designates the
Isn't that obvious? All right, I'll go.
Because you were interviewed going into the Blue Jays game when
Yes, I was.
I recognized you. Well, you must know Niagara Falls inside out, backwards, back of your head.
Yeah, the more you know about history, the more you know you don't know everything. Exactly. We're good. We're good.
What were the make of all those cars?
You know, especially if something.
The only thing that you really like not to have is all the noise.
Yeah.
We could gather in here, folks.
Move on in. You're going to head back to the church?
My back will be to the
All right. His back's going to be the church, so you want to move in. In the shade.
So if you could just gather in the lawn area here, everybody, in front of me, that would be great. Yeah, we're a little further away from the heavy traffic here. Not much, but a little. So yeah, if we could just move on in this way. How are we doing for volume here? Are you able to hear me okay? I can't turn this too much higher. I'll start a squeal. So I hope you're all right with the volume. Yeah. Okay.
It's just the cars.
The cars, yes. Well, not much we can do there. All right, we're at Christ Church then. certainly a Niagara Falls landmark here for well over a century. The cornerstone for this building was laid on the 31st of July, 1865. And the first service here was held on December the 17th, that same year, 1865. The wings or transepts, there's one here you can see and one on the other side, were added in 1893. Originally at the front of the church here there was a tall stone tower with a wooden steeple on the top. But that was changed in 1935 to a stone tower which was much lower then. And there were some modifications made again in 1954 to the front of the church then. So it took on the look you see now. Certainly one of the highlights of the history of this church came on the 14th of October, 1951, when we had some very, very special guests. Princess Elizabeth, now Queen Elizabeth II then, and her husband, Prince Philip, worshipped here then as part of their visit to Niagara Falls, which in turn was part of a cross-country tour they were making that year in 1951. We're going to find out a lot more about this church and have a look inside at the end of this tour when we make our way back through here. We're going to be invited inside, and we'll have a couple of members of the church give us a tour of the inside. So I hope you'll all stay around for that. It's part of the tour. You don't have to do it, of course, but I hope some of you will, or most of you will for that matter, and have a look inside this church. It's quite an interesting building with all kinds of interesting windows, plaques, and so on and so on and so on. So we'll look forward to that. A couple of comments about the street names here. This is Zimmerman Avenue, named after Samuel Zimmerman. Samuel Zimmerman, in many ways considered the father of Niagara Falls. In the early days of Clifton, the mid-1850s, he was the best-known citizen here and certainly the wealthiest by far. He was a prominent builder, promoter, and developer. He had his own contracting business. In fact, his company built the Great Western Railway line from Hamilton to Clifton here in Niagara Falls in 1853 that we referred to earlier. He was well-liked by pretty well everybody. Some people maybe resented him a little bit, but by and by he was well-liked, well-respected. Not only did he own a lot of property on the town site here, but he also owned the Clifton House Hotel, which stood on the site now occupied by Oaks Garden Theater then at the foot of Clifton Hill. The Clifton House Hotel at the time was the largest, the most opulent, and certainly the best-known hotel in Niagara Falls by far. It had a worldwide reputation. He also owned most of the land that's now Queen Victoria Park, as well as the land above the high bank behind Queen Victoria Park. He was in the process of establishing a estate there for himself and his family when, tragically, in the spring of 1857, he was killed in a railway accident near Dundas. Samuel Zimmerman. Now this, then, the east end of Morrison Street. Morrison Street's named after Joseph Morrison, who was a very good friend of Samuel Zimmerman's. Morrison was a lawyer and a parliamentarian. He represented this area, in fact, for a number of years in the Parliament of pre-Confederation Canada. It was Morrison who sort of opened a few doors for Zimmerman into the government circles, so Zimmerman could meet people who had the kind of influence he needed, let's say, especially to help him win contracts for his construction company. So Morrison was an influential individual in Samuel Zimmerman's life, and as a result, he named this street in honor of his good friend, Joseph Morrison. Now, a house to look at here, if you follow my fingers behind me, but in front of you, the large, dark, red brick house over here, that's known as the second Banfield House. The second Banfield House, built by James Banfield Sr. back in 1875. It's primarily in the Gothic Revival style of architecture, I'm told. Several generations or more, actually, of the Banfield family owned that house up until 1969. So for almost 100 years, the house was in the Banfield family. We'll say more about Mr. Banfield, especially Mr. Banfield Sr., and we'll see his first house a little bit later on in this tour. Okay, now in a moment we're going to go to the sidewalk. We're going to go up the sidewalk here then. almost to the point you see up here where we will stop once again.
Just gather around the point area here, facing this way.
You're gonna love this. I feel like Coco just texted me and says, I'm watching you on the live stream. It's so bad.
Okay, again, move in a little closer, that's probably helpful. We don't need a golf here, really. All right, thank you. What we're looking at here, folks, is across the street, this fairly large yellow home you see here. I'm pointing to it now, I think. Bedham Hall is what it's known as, Bedham Hall. And it was the home, at one time, of one of the city's more colorful and mysterious citizens. His name is Alexander Leon Hatzan, H-A-T-Z-A-N. He was born in Belgium back in 1864. It's believed he took some medical training in London, England, but even though he in later life referred to himself as a doctor, there's zero evidence that he ever earned a medical degree. He claimed to have lived for extended periods of time among various indigenous groups in both South America and in North America, including some time with the Six Nations land near Brantford, Ontario. He and his wife, Ada, moved to Niagara Falls in 1918, and in 1920 they bought this house, which was somewhat smaller than what you see now. It's been enlarged in more recent times. It was likely while he was living among indigenous groups in South America, North America, that Hatzan learned quite a bit about herbal remedies. Herbal remedies. He was convinced of their importance. So he went into business here in this house using the name Professor Hatzan, although he was not a professor. Well, that's what he chose to say. If you went to him with some sort of ailment, he would likely prescribe for you then one or more herbal remedies, and he also offered massage therapy. But he branched out into other areas too. He wrote poetry, he wrote short stories, and he wrote music, most of which was published by his own publishing company called the Mohawk Music and Book Company. Interesting fellow. He died in 1941 and is buried in Fairview Cemetery. Alexander Leon Hatzan, Bedham Hall. All right, now the plan here is, and Jonathan knows already, we're going to be crossing the street here to the far side and continuing on down River Road.
Slide through them. You stay there, John. I'll come up here. for us.
Yeah, I know that.
So we're in this area here, everybody. There's a sidewalk on the barricades. So we're in between the barricades here, folks, and the sidewalk area. You can use the sidewalk too, of course. So if you just fill in here, please, folks, and the sidewalk if you wish. Now, we just move on.
Move on in. Move on in. It's fine.
So those still coming can fill in here. Good idea. Okay. I appreciate the efforts of a number of people in arranging this for us so we can stand here safely on the street. So I appreciate the efforts, as I say, of those from the city and the museum who made this possible. We'll have a couple of more of these. Oh, Carolyn. And the tour here this afternoon, and Gary, too. This is Ellis Street, named apparently for a family that, way back, over several generations, owned a large section of the property in this area at one time, the Ellis family. Now what we're looking at here behind me in front of you is the, often referred to anyways, the Duran Marshall House then. One of Niagara Falls' most stunning 19th century heritage properties then. Built in 1889 by William Duran, who along with his brother Charles, operated the Dominion Suspender Company here for many years. This was a big business. Dominion Suspender. They not only did business locally but across Canada and many parts of the world. It was a big deal and made a lot of money for the brothers. And of course this was an era when most men held up their pants by means of suspenders, not belts. So sales were brisk. Sales were quite brisk, in fact. This is a Queen Anne Revival style house, then a wonderful wide veranda, as you can see, a tower, and some of you might catch a glimpse too of the very elegant former coach house at the rear of the house. William and his wife, Alice, became renowned locally for their dinner parties here and other social events. The house became quite a social center. If you received an invitation to a social function of some kind here, well, you were right in the mix, in the middle of things. That was great. It was an honor almost to be a part of their social circle, let's say. It is also believed that William Duran owned the first automobile in Niagara Falls. He had enough money to do that here. And so that was quite a distinction too. Later on, mid-1920s, 1925, the house was owned by John Marshall, who was a long-time school inspector here in the Niagara Falls area. And as many of you know, there is a school named for him, right? The John Marshall Elementary School on St. James Street. The house is now owned by David and David are right there, putting their hands up. Over a number of years. How many years have you had the place, Gary? 20 years. 40 years. Over the 40-year period, they have brought this house back to life. It's a magnificent home inside and out, and they both deserve a great deal of credit for the work, the effort, the money that they put into this home, making it a true showplace. So congratulations to both of you. Maybe any of you have a couple of quick questions for Gary or Carolyn. They run a B&B here, of course, known as Park Place. Do any of you have a question for them?
does your gardening?
Who does the gardening?
The garden?
Gardening. Apparently it's Gary. Yeah. He does inside and outside work. Any other questions? Oh, down here on, well, let's see, just off River Road. Yeah, in the Clifton area. No, not far. Easy walking distance from here.
How many bedrooms do you have?
There are 3 on the upper floor. The rooms, there aren't a lot of rooms in the house, but they're all big.
The suites. Yeah.
Yeah. There used to be four bedrooms upstairs, but now and a kitchen.
Oh,
But now they're
okay.
Who cooks breakfast?
Pardon?
Who cooks breakfast?
Very good breakfast too.
Yeah,
I've eaten there.
Who would be your most well-known guest?
Especially who's the best one?
I never asked for names. I don't
Well, thanks for joining us, Gary. Always a treat to see you, and we appreciate you coming out and answering a few questions about your beautiful home. So all of us continued good fortune here and carry on with our place.
Many years ago, I had company that went to the States from Poland
Oh, yeah.
to speak English for a wedding. They had got married as their honeymoon. This is where they stayed when they came to Niagara Falls with Carol.
Yeah, it's all regular people that
Yeah.
stay there. Not
They did
famous.
a very hospitality.
I don't want any famous
Yeah.
people.
They were famous.
Going on down into the road.
I got some stragglers. I'll move up. I'll let you know. Well, watch yourself. Few people stopped to chat with Gary and his wife. No, I don't think so, but it looks like it had. It had. Well, are you going to cross it up or
What do you think?
why not? We'll let these people go then? Whoa! Look at this. Another day on the parkway. There we go. Nope, nope, didn't make it. Didn't make it. Wait for these few.
I should be here, and you're facing this house. Yeah, assemble out here, folks. You're facing this way, looking at this house behind me. You're looking at the house behind me. So, yeah, just fill in a little bit. Maybe you can come forward a little bit. Very good. Okay, absolutely. No problem at all. Fawn, you ought to just kind of monitor there's a driveway here, so I need to keep watch on that. Well, we're here now on Simcoe Street. Simcoe Street got its name from the first Lieutenant Governor of what is now the province of Ontario, John Graves Simcoe, who was in office from 1791 to 1796, and for most of those years he was headquartered in what is now Niagara-on-the-Lake. Now we're here for several reasons. One is to give you a look around Simcoe Street. You have a number of very interesting and in some cases quite large 19th century homes here, and some of which, as you can see as well, are B&Bs. Yeah, so a really interesting array. You can see that that's by walking. You know, I've been up and down the street many times over the years by car, but last summer, Ann, my wife Ann, was here down there, and I walked this street and some others nearby, and we were really quite taken with the architecture and so on of many of these homes, heritage homes. And you can see all this better, of course, by walking, as we're doing this afternoon. Now we're stopped in front of this particular house behind me, in front of you, because this particular house, number 4320, was the residence of George Hannon. George Hannon was the first mayor of the city of Niagara Falls when it came into being in 1904. A little bit of background about this man, who with his wife Mary and their children lived here a long time ago. George Hannon was born in Cork, Ireland in 1855. He came to Canada when he was 29 years old in search of new opportunities. In 1887, while he was working for various railway interests, he happened to come here to Niagara Falls, and he liked what he saw, so he decided to settle here, and he did. Hannon's very friendly, affable personality and his excellent business sense soon made him a very popular, well-known citizen here. He was elected to the Niagara Falls Town Council in 1891. He served as mayor of the town in 1894, 1895, 1902, and 1903, and as I said a moment ago, in January 1904, became the first mayor of the newly created city of Niagara Falls. As you may have guessed, in those days, municipal elections were held every year. Then from 1905 to 1908, he again served as a councillor. Commenting on George Hannon's years of public service, the Niagara Falls Daily Record, which is an early newspaper here, noted, and this is back in 1907, and I'm quoting, "Mr. George Hannon probably has as strong a hold on public affairs and public minds as any man who has ever been a resident of this city. Niagara Falls owes many of its successes to Mr. Hanna. Very nice tribute. In his private life, he worked as an inspector for the Grand Trunk Railway for 25 years. George Hannon died rather suddenly on July 15th, 1912. He was only 57. His death was quite a shock to the community here. And another little anecdote I'll share with you here. Just a few hours after his passing, when word had spread around the town, a beautiful floral tribute was delivered here to the Hannon home. It was a nod to Hannon's Irish ancestry, since the floral tribute was in the shape of an Irish harp, but one string was broken. His funeral service was at Christ Church, which we'll be seeing again in a few minutes. He had been a member there for many years and acted as a warden there for some time as well. And he was then buried in the Fairview Cemetery. So a bit about the first mayor of our city of Niagara Falls, George Hanna, who lived here a long time ago. Now in a moment, we're going to be going back down to River Road. We'll be turning right. As we do, we're going to see on your right a very large home, which is painted gray and appropriately named Gray Stone Manor. It dates to 1912. 1912 was built by John Hamilton Stewart, who at the time was the manager of the Bank of Hamilton here. At that time, the Bank of Hamilton was a widely known bank, and it had branches in many communities in southern Ontario. Bank, of course, no longer exists and hasn't for a long time. It was housed in a building here that still stands right at the corner of Queen and Erie, on the north side there, facing the old City Hall property. It's a 3-story brick building, I think is unoccupied at the moment, but that's where the Bank of Hamilton was located. That's where Mr. Stewart went to work every day for a number of years. So the Gray Stone Manor here, 1912, as we round the corner. So again, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, what have you, we'll be glad to hear those. Yes, ma'am?
Do you know anything about that?
I do not, no. Is anyone here, you talking about the brick one here? Yeah. Anyone help us on that? It's a very large home, obviously, in a very interesting area. Very fair question. Sorry, I just don't have any information on that. All right.
Thank you.
Which one? The gentleman up there just yelled it out.
Okay, we got some info on this brick house, 1869. 1869. Yeah, it looks in very good condition.
Wow.
Where was it located? Oh, okay.
House you were speaking about?
I'm sorry?
What was the first house you were speaking about here?
One you were facing there, the Hannon home. Is that what you were facing? Oh, the large brick one was on the street.
One more block, right?
One more block to Banfield and then double back to the church. elegant property here.
Mm-hmm. Couple have done a wonderful job.
This Banfield house up here is a bit of a hidden gem.
It's an interesting house. It's a bit baffling in many ways.
Yeah,
Just the construction of it, it's kind of peculiar.
yeah, rather radical for the time, I would think.
It's very handy on these smaller streets.
Not that busy. There's again.
Where do you want to stand?
I'll be here.
Come on.
The people face the building.
Why don't you?
You're facing this way, folks. Stone building you see there in front of you. So if we can just assemble once again inside the barricades here, folks. We're going to be facing the stone building you see here behind me. Facing this way then, behind me. You're looking at that one? Yeah. All right, so you can just move in a bit too, so we don't block any traffic coming down the other side there.
I'm here.
Okay. I don't think we startled too many residents here. I don't see them anyway. All right. Well, you may recall earlier in our tour, we were looking at what I referred to as the second Banfield house. Remember, it was on Zimmerman Avenue, just across from Christ Church, a large red brick home built by John Banfield Sr. in 1875. Now, behind me here, you're looking at the first Banfield house. A bit about James Banfield Sr. He was born in Devonshire, England in 1813. As a young man, he immigrated first to the United States, lived in New York for a time, then came to Canada. He worked in Toronto first and then in Hamilton, where he operated the Great Western Railway, remember that? Restaurant in the Great Western Railway Station in that city, Hamilton then. It was the opportunity to have the same kind of business here that brought him to, well, what is now Niagara Falls then, in 1860. Matter of fact, the family arrived in January of 1860. Shortly after their arrival, James Banfield built this quite substantial house. So it dates to 1860. It's somewhat similar to the Regency style, perfectly square plan, tall limestone block walls, and a very high raised basement. The dormers you see in the roof are a much more recent addition, let's say, not part of the original. Now you'll notice the house faces the river. It does not face the street here, Banfield Street, named obviously after the family then. But the house faces the river. The front door's around this way then. If you haven't noticed it, you'll see it when we go back down the street, if you look off to your left here. That's because, of course, in 1860 there were no homes in front of this place. the front lawn, let's say basically, sloped from this house all the way down to the gorge. So you had a very nice view of that area, I would imagine that. Now apparently, however, James Banfield Sr.'s wife, who was Margaret, did not like this house. She just didn't like it at all, but it took 15 years of her complaints before her husband built the next house, the Banfield House number 2, down on Zimmerman. Local lore has it, this is not historical fact, just local lore, that in the early years of the 20th century, this house was used as a brothel. Maybe, maybe not. Back to James Banfield Sr. He operated the restaurant then in the Great Western Railway Station, which stood on Bridge Street, exactly where the present railway station is located then. Now, the original station was made of wood. It was totally destroyed in a disastrous fire in April of 1879. James Banfield Sr. took a big financial hit. All of the equipment, everything he had in that restaurant was gone, and he had very little insurance. He died, in fact, just 2 months later, so you might wonder if the disastrous financial hit he experienced because of that fire affected his health adversely, and it may have. He died of a stroke, as I say, just 2 months after the fire. Well, a new railway station was erected on the site of the old. That's the present station that we still have that. It officially opened on January the 10th, 1880, and in charge of the restaurant in the new station was James Banfield Jr. And it was called, by the way, Banfield's Refreshment Room and Dining Hall. James is also involved in some other businesses here in Niagara Falls. He, along with some partners, built Niagara Falls' first electrical generating station. They used steam power. That was in 1891. He and the partners owned the station until 1899 when the town bought it. Now, it was James Banfield Jr. that built this White House you just see down here at the corner. All right? However, it wasn't as big as it is now. The original part is this half, if you like, half closest to Banfield Street here. In more recent times, large extensions have been built to this house on the north side and at the back. But the original part, as I say, is this half closest to Banfield Street. A very striking house. Later, in 1942, the house was purchased by John Hopkins, who was a longtime police magistrate here in Niagara Falls. It's now a B&B called the Chestnut Inn, and it's quite a striking property. So the Banfields, a long history in this city and certainly on this street. Any questions, comments about any of this?
Somebody's still living in this one?
Yes, this is occupied. The stone house is occupied, yes.
Oh, yeah.
All right, now the plan here, folks, in a moment, we're going to proceed back on down Banfield. We'll be taking a left and retracing our steps back to Christ Church. And there, we will be having a tour of the interior of the church. Our guides will be Isabel Ridgway and Kathy Lowe, who are both members of that church and are well qualified to act as tour guides. And I want to thank, too, the rector there, Paul Maynard, for his considerable help in arranging all of this so that we could have access to his church this afternoon. So thank you very much to the rector, Paul Maynard of Christ Church. So I will have no more commentary, call it that, I guess, from here to Christ Church. I'll introduce you to the guys once we get there, and then they will take over. And you're free, of course, to leave any time you wish after that and make your way back to your car or to your house. And I'll take this chance right now, then, to say thank you very, very much for joining me this afternoon. I really appreciate your interest. I know it's a warm day, but not too bad. It's not raining, as I said earlier, so that's a bonus always. Thanks to the volunteers who helped out here so very much. Thanks to all of you who joined us by live stream. We're glad to have your company. Hope you'll stick with us here yet. So any final comments, questions, concerns? I hope you'll join me again. We'll have another tour in the spring, probably Fairview Cemetery. That's not confirmed, but yeah.
Well, now we want to go.
Yeah. Well, that's the plan at the moment, anyway. Fairview Cemetery. Lots of interesting stories in that cemetery, believe me. Okay, so yeah, we're going to make our way, as you see, back down to River Road. We'll be turning left, and we'll see you at Christ Church.
I'll try and stay at the front.
Kind of split up. Now I
It is a baby.
Yep.
But can we look at it online after?
Yes. Yeah, it's going to be on our Facebook page. I'm going to load it to YouTube eventually as well. Just hold on. Oops. Hold on a second.
Making sure I have a budget to make sure I
All right, come on. Get across. I'm all right.
And I seem to have developed.
It's just hard to type and film and walk. Hi there. How you doing?
Haven't seen you for a
Oh,
while.
it's been a while.
Some things never change.
Okay, sorry, we're a little behind.
That's fine.
I'm glad you hung in there for us. Appreciate you waiting. This one is issue 102.
Everybody can't go in.
We better kind of,
Yeah, Isabel's wonderful. Stay with us.
maybe right here. And the rest of you go in with the outside first.
Oh, Isabel's doing that side.